Hey everyone, P.L. Stuart here, author of the Drowned Kingdom Saga. And today I'll be reading an excerpt from Book 1 of the Drowned Kingdom Saga, entitled The Drowned Kingdom. Chapter 1. I brought rebellion to our island after the reign of King Atlantis called the Falcon. The Falcon, who was the ninth king of that name, was my one-time father. Atlantis had two heirs. The first heir apparent and elder was Othrun, first prince and lord of the north half of our island kingdom called Atlantis. I was the younger heir, Othrun, second prince, and ruler of the south part of the realm known as Surtex. The king's first wife and cousin Olanna had died in childbirth with Othrun. In a twist of bitter fate, the king's second wife, Marin, also a cousin, perished as well, from bearing me squealing into the world. Marin, my mother, whose sweet smile I only saw in portraits, and whose tender caress I never felt. It was forever denied to me. The women in my family had scant fortune with pregnancy. With funerals and baptisms for ladies and infants of royal lineage, one often followed the other. The first question asked when a child of blood was born was not, "What shall it be named?" It was not, "How much does it weigh?" Rather it was, "Does the mother live?" That mother, my mother, did not live. Mother, hailed the merry princess by her loving subjects, was dead before her time, at not yet 20 years old. Mother did not live more than an hour after I was born, and thus died long before she would ever see strife arise between Othrun and me. From what I heard of Mother, who was said to be a gentle, caring soul, it was one of the few kindnesses of her death that she never saw we two one-time brothers set against each other. It would have broken her heart. My rebellion's inception came long after Mother's death, when we lads, Othrun, 17, and I, 15, journeyed together over the sea. We sailed from our island to the shores of Crimea, continent of pagans. We princes were to be emissaries from Father, coming in peace to Crimea. At least, that was what Father told the pagans. Truly, our trip was spawned of Father's hope to unearth the resources, wealth, and military capabilities of the barbarian cultures controlling Crimea. Thus, the Falcon would have knowledge he could exploit and use to help him invade and eventually conquer all of Crimea. Crimea was little known, at least by our people. What was known was steeped largely in fables and legend. Crimea was a land of beauty, the ancient tales told. Still, there were some contemporary stories of the continent. Some lords of my island, courageous explorers, visited parts of Crimea and beyond, and upon their return relayed what they saw. My elder cousin Glathan was among them. He and our other lords who went to Crimea did little but augment the stories of the continent's grandeur and its volatility. Majestic peaks rose in Crimea, and clear lakes there shimmered like glass, according to Glathan and the other nobles. The continent supposedly had fields of plenty, bountiful for harvest. Unfortunately, it was said that Crimea remained polluted by roaming barbarian hordes, led by competing heathen kings and chieftains who ravaged, burned, and slew those who opposed them. It's a place of marauders, rapists, and murderers, our lord said of Crimea. They told of a land of too many kings to keep track of, ever-changing with rulers continually vanquished. New monarchs rose in their stead. Then they too were overcome and replaced with yet different rulers in an endless cycle of instability. We learned from our lords who went to Crimea that kingdoms were incessantly being wiped out, then reformed, and so the pattern repeated. Boundaries were continually redrawn, and only the fiercest and hardiest realms remained somewhat constant and intact, where reign passed from king to heir without complete upheaval. For Crimea was to be conquered, much more would need to be known of the many sovereigns who held it. We islanders would need to understand what resistance, what obstacles, and what alliances could be expected, should we, the mightiest nation on earth, wish to have all those petty kings ultimately submit. Father, old by that time and late to the throne because of the long life of his own father, still dreamed of sailing a mighty armada west to take Crimea, to show the domination of our people. He did not doubt the might of his navy. Of all the lands of the world, his ships were the greatest. The bravery of his mounted knights was undisputed. The superiority of his siege weapons was irresistible. He could sweep across the continent, as was done over the long years of our island's domination in Atlantis. Atlantis was a continent near our homeland, which we call the mainland, where after centuries, several larger Atlantis kingdoms had come under our heel. Thus, some measure of success was anticipated. But Father did not wish nominal gains. He wished to impose his will, to leave his mark, and to forge a lasting empire in Crimea, not just establish unwieldy, faraway colonies continually revolting against the Tri-Crown's iron rule. Father knew he would have to leave a trail of blood splattered across the Crimea. To do it, as had been the case in Atlantis, so be it. He would paint the Crimea red in the blood of pagans, if need be. Father therefore held out one hand and offered friendship and peace to any Crimean kingdom who would take it. It was all a ruse. Father did not want peace in the Crimea, except the peace he would bring post-conquest. He hoped the warring realms kept fighting each other. He wanted to leave those countries collectively weaker, which strengthened his own position. His friendship was contrived to draw an unsuspecting dupe in need of allies and assistance against enemies into his game. At the opportune moment, he would reach out his other hand to take all that he wanted. Messenger birds flew back and forth from our island to Crimea for several years, yet numerous attempts to forge alliances with various kings bore no fruit. Why? We were so mighty. Who would not wish to have us as their friend? It was because there was little trust throughout the world for our kingdom, known as a good subjugator, but a poor ally. Everyone expected we would eventually turn on whomever we befriended, and they were right. That was Father's plan. That plot of Father's was simple. He schemed to make friendship within a Crimean nation and supply them with help in the form of our superior weaponry, backed by our tremendous warriors and mighty ships. That support would help that nation defeat their enemies and acquire more territory. Then, when that nation became powerful enough and completely aligned with us, we would turn on them. We would take all the lands from them that we had conquered together. Thus, we would establish a foothold in the continent. Once we had a foothold, we would gain more allies in the same fashion, then betray them and gain even more lands. We'd repeat this pattern until we no longer needed allies of our Crimeans, no longer needed their knowledge of the continent, and eventually we would own all lands in Crimea. At first, there were no takers. Perhaps the Crimeans sensed our plans would mean no good for whichever kingdoms were used to see Father's plan to fruition. Yet Father finally found a willing partner in Crimea who seemed naive to our designs. Or, if not ingenuous, the willing partner was fool enough to believe that they in turn could use us and outsmart us. That willing partner was found in Mag, king of Norsun. Norsun was a small but proud seafaring kingdom on the eastern coast of northeast of Crimea. Seafaring was a kindness, meaning they were pirates. Northern Crimea, called the Senave, or Senavia, was the land of the Senavians, a fierce people led by a collection of indomitable warlords who had raid vessels and capable sea captains of their own. Senavian piracy was well known to ravish the continent's shorelines. The Senave contrasted with southern Crimea, known as Eltnia, ruled by the Elnish. Elnish tribes were similar to those of Senavia, but the main distinction was that the Elnish were known for rampaging armies who razed cities to the ground, not menace on the seas. While far from the richest or the most important realms among Senavians or Elnish, Father found Norsun to be the most pliable and the most interested in acquiring influential friends from across the ocean. Meg apparently had plenty of enemies in his environs. He could always use a little help with killing as many of them as possible. Enter Atalanteans, his new benefactor. It was fitting that king meet with the other king. But father's advanced age and declining health it made him unfit to travel the distance for the embassy. The stress of such a trip, it was feared, would have sent him to the grave earlier than planned. Besides, a pagan Scandinavian king was hardly an equal potentate for the world's greatest godly sovereign. Therefore, we two princes would have to suffice as representatives of the mighty Ataland. So, father commanded Urthel and I to be dispatched to Norsund. With the curiousness of both king's heirs being chanced on such a potentially dangerous excursion, some of our lords believe father must have attached both urgency and importance to the mission. Some lords could not see the relevance being worthy of the risk. No previous king of our island had bothered with the Crimea. It seemed too unmanageable and remote, and not worth the trouble. Holding on to our colonies in Atlantis had gained us riches and descendancy, but proved exhausting. Mastery of our Crimea looked even more draining. Yet father would not be deterred. My summation was that father felt his life drawing to its end, and wished to live to hear of, if not see, his forces blanketing a Crimea, led by his sons. He envisioned his falcon banner, a red bird with wings spread, soaring in its hunt on a black background, raised over palisades of defeated pagan lords. He was one of the very few of our island's kings not to have amassed any new lands during his reign. He would not suffer the shame of dying ignominious. Perhaps, besides his own ambitions for conquest, the falcon saw that only trouble and rivalry would come of his two young princes' own aspirations. For Urthel and I were thought to be two princes who were hot for battle, impatient for glory, and hungry for power. There were no immediate enemies to fight during a long stretch of peace, no honor to win, nor a throne yet to sit upon. So, it seemed, the thinking was that it was better to send us together to see for ourselves what holdings there were to be gained in the Crimea in the future. It was assumed we heirs might be at the head of conquering armies soon, so as best we know who and what we'd be conquering. We were two young princes who were very aware that we were but half-brothers, and that although both of us were born to be great men, only one of us would rule the ancient kingdom. That would be Urthel, the eldest. Some of our lords said that providing new fiefdoms was desirable if father planned to entertain his eldest son's desire to be king of more than our island and our feudal estates, such as Berefit, Chainon, and Leifrin on the mainland continent of Atlantis. It was also a necessity if father wished to satisfy my desire to be lord of something more than Surtix, since as youngest son I could not rule the island kingdom. I had never expressed such a desire to father, yet who would refuse one's land's influence and glory expanded? Father assumed that desire for me. He was not wrong. It was one of the few times I felt father knew what was in my heart, for I did not believe he knew me well at all. What better places for Urthel and me to rule than acquired lands where savages bowed down to idols and where infidels worshipped wind, earth, sun, and other elements in their ignorance of the single God. The single God was the true God, the eternal triangle and circle, the God of life, love, and light. The single God was the irresistible and only God. Just to be assured of the single God's inexorability, we islanders had torn down the Atlantis pagans' deplorable shrines and put their detested shamans to the sword. We supplanted those shrines with our holy temples and our reverent priests and priestesses who'd replaced the shamans. Father planned that the idolatry of the Crimeans would meet the same fate as the Atlantis. After all, to be brought under the rule of godly Ataland would surely save those heathen souls from apostasy. Save them, that is, once they were defeated, humbled, educated, and their sinful ways turned. Gaining fertile plains for farming, teeming waters filled with fish, and valleys brimming with fruit and orchards for our island was considered a small but fitting reward for our blessed race, compared to our work towards the salvation of pagan souls. No doubt, religious conversions of the Ukrainian pagans would make us islanders even more favored by God, and be further proof that we were divinely chosen for greatness. No one, least of all King Atalant, ever dreamed that first Prince Othrun would forego worship of the single god, defend idolaters, and allow those same pagan gods to hold power in our island. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this reading. Find more indie author reading library performances on our YouTube channel, along with our Meet the Author interviews and recordings of previous panels. Hit subscribe to get notifications for every new video. Find us at glasgow2024.org and as Glasgow in 2024 on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Check out our cool merch on redbubble.com/people/Glasgow2024/shop and consider joining by emailing volunteers at glasgow2024.org.